Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and I am on location in Connecticut somewhere at Marc D'Antonio's house. He's got an observatory on the lawn. It's pretty exciting. And just a second, we have Alejandro Rojas coming live all the way from Phoenix with the UFO updates. A couple things. I want to thank those who support the show, and all it takes is $2 or more a month. You can see that on podcastufo.com. And if you can't support the show and you want to listen to the full show, all you have to do is you can actually watch it on YouTube live stream, as it is right now. And that you can get there right from podcastufo.com every Wednesday at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to listen to the whole show for free, also, you can go over to the Dark Matter Digital Network and listen Thursdays from 10 to midnight. And so that is how that works. Now, chat, Melanie, who listens to the show, gave me a great tip the other day. And she said, you should have someone monitor your chat and not even worry about it and have them send you texts of questions. And, I do get distracted. I always come in and say hi to everyone. But starting next week, I'm going to have someone in the chat room monitoring it and sending me questions. That way I can focus totally on the interview. And I should have thought that a long time ago, and I want to thank Melanie for that. We also have some blogs up on our website, and that is from a gentleman that's writing blogs from India for us. He does a great job. Hope you check that out. There's a couple of them. I think he does an excellent job. And I think that is about it. We are ready for the UFO updates with Alejandro. How are you, Alejandro?
I am well. How are you, my friend?
Doing good. So what's happening? Oh, look at your background. I hope people actually do get to see this on YouTube.
Can people see me right now?
They can. Don't do anything silly.
Do I have clothes on? Oh, thank goodness I do. Well, I'm at the office. I typically do in the office.
Yeah, the Empress clothes. Yeah, new suit. Yes.
But I kind of feel like I'm being watched. I always feel like somebody's watching me. Is there something behind me? Am I being watched right now?
You do have some aliens behind you.
Oh my goodness.
Of the gray kind. A whole slew of them, one with a necktie. Oh my God. Wow.
Holy, that guy's probably coming to town for an interview of some sort. We actually hired him because he wore the tie.
I see. Wow.
Yeah, it's very important what you wear and that you dress up when you go for an interview.
Yeah, I've heard that. At least he has a tie anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on with the UFO news out there?
Although he's got nothing else on. I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
Usually wear something else with the tie. But anyway, sorry about that. So I have an interesting story here. This is a good one. We just posted today. This is posted by Roger Marsh, of course, the director of communications for MUFON, a MUFON case. This happened on he didn't put the date, actually. So I'm guessing it happened pretty recently, but it was in California. The headline's fun. So here's the headline. Ready for it?
Oh, yeah.
Witness says deer noticed two hovering objects nearby. A deer. That's right. Not his deer.
A deer?
No, a deer, just a deer. I'm not sure of its age or anything like that. But so this is a lady who said she was in her living room doing housework when she noticed a pulsing light down the hill from where she was. She looked and was staring at it, and she was like, what the heck is that? It was this pulsing pencil-like thing, she said. It was 10 feet off of the ground. And then she noticed that there was a wild deer looking up at the object. And it's kind of funny because it grabbed a mouthful of food, she said. It was eating. It would grab a mouthful of food and then just look up at the thing like, eating food and looking up there. She said she couldn't tell what the heck the thing is. She said the second object was moving around a tree, which is pretty weird, of course. She couldn't figure out. She thought that maybe these things were observing the deer, and the deer didn't seem to really care at all. It was just like, "Hey, dudes," And she went inside to tell her family about it. And then when she came out, she said the objects were gone. She watched them for about 5 to 7 minutes. This was in Amador County, California, so kind of a rural area. But what a funny one, huh?
I've never heard of anything. Never heard tell, as they say. Wow, that is really crazy.
So weird and a bit humorous as well. At least I find it, just picturing that deer kind of eating and watching the UFO.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Deer are must be used to the UFOs.
Well, they're in the woods all the time. They're not nocturnal. I know that they do sleep at night, but but they probably stay up late and looking up at the sky. What else do you do when you're a deer? You don't have, no smartphone or tablet or anything. You got to do something.
Exactly. So they're also in the news as far as headlines. I wanted to talk about headlines because there's some cool headlines lately. And remember, we have the headlines posted on the front page of openminds.tv, but you can also go to the articles and go look at the daily headlines, which is a great resource because you'll see, headlines from every day for years. But some of the headlines lately, one of them being Ridley Scott. So we've talked about this before. I'm sure you and I have. I know I've mentioned it on my show. I think I've maybe even written about it. He's really into ancient aliens, and we know, he's talked about this in the past, and especially when Prometheus came up, because it kind of had that ancient aliens thing to it. There was a little bit more information, but now that the new Aliens movie is coming out, he's gone a little bit further to talk about how not only does he believe aliens are real, he believes they are going to take us down. Aliens are coming. And they are going to wipe the floor with us. And it's probably because, and we talked about this before, humans are kind of a-hole-ish. And I think that's what his theory is, that they're just going to come here and be like.
All right. But, if you want to go all the way back to ancient time, we've always had the, what did you say, a-hole-ish?
A-hole-ish.
Like Stan Friedman always says, we're very tribal. We've always been tribal and, always gained, it's part of it is evolutionary. That whole need to be tribal and aggressive and all that. So I don't think, they had so many opportunities. And
you can make as many excuses for the human race as you want, but humans are not just going to keep eating their cereal, and look at the UFO like the deer and be peaceful and be like, hey, how you doing? We're coexisting. Humans are going to get their weapons and large missiles and things and try to destroy the UFO. And so...
Yeah, there have actually been, what was there's that book, Shoot 'Em Down or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of a neat story. Something interesting. There's a lot of astrobiological stories too. So, finding exoplanets, these different types of exoplanets out there. However, I'll leave that discussion to your guest, Marc D'Antonio, who's pretty much a specialist in that area, so he can tell you more about that. But other than that, I do want to say, I guess to wrap it up, this is still really cool, is that Cheryl Costa, her book about, UFO sightings is still getting news out there. So a paper that's more local to where she's from actually did a story today. But I think that's really, really cool. It's not just that her book is interesting in that, it's a kind of a dry read because it's all statistics and stuff, but it's good for people like you and I, people who research or write stories. And so it's important for the media because then they can go in there and say, hey, I'm in this rural area in California and this deer was watching UFO. How many UFOs have humans reported in the area? So it's useful that way. But she was proactive about getting out there and getting to the media and making them aware of her book. And it's paying off in spades, as they say.
Wow, that's great. I know I think so. It's really getting a lot of traction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent.
So there's some news for you. If was that okay?
As always, Alejandro, it was fantastico. And
Thank you.
I wanted to just tell everyone out there, I listened to your show last, from someone that was on my show, George Gaines. Now, I think your show and my show are the only two that he's done, but I want to tell you, you did an awesome job. It was a really, really good interview. So I recommend to any of my listeners, please check out Alejandro's last week interview. It is really, really good. A lot of things came up between you two that didn't come up on my show that I thought was great.
You're just looking for so we can pat each other on the back, which is nice. That's good. That's good human behavior. If we acted more like this, aliens might not want to destroy us. But of course, I owe it all to you because you're the one who got me in contact with this great, interesting gentleman, Dr. George Gaines. He's a very interesting person. So thank you so much for getting me in contact with him.
Oh, that was fine. Anyway, I want to thank you, sir. And we're going to talk about tonight, what the heck would aliens be like in general, with a whole bunch of ideas I want to throw at Mark to see just what his thoughts are on that. And, I think it'll be great. All right.
That does sound fabulous.
Yeah. All right, Alejandro. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Have fun, guys.
Okay. Take care. All right. You're going to have to sign out, Alejandro. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right. So here we are. We're in studio. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Martin?
I know it's hard to tell which way to look at the camera, isn't it?
Well, I know that the camera's here, so if I'm talking to an audience, I would do this. I would gesture if necessary. Yeah. But you're here.
Yeah.
And if I just think, well, the camera's inside your eye, then that works. That helps. But I can manage.
Okay. So I did want to tell the audience that we have Kay is volunteered to help in the chat room tonight. Thank you so much, Kay. So I am going to turn away from the chat room tonight and try to focus on this interview. And if any really good questions come up on chat, please do post them, and Kay will get them in to us. Also, we actually have an availability to take anyone that wants to join us later on in Google Hangouts. So that's a possibility too. All you need is a Gmail address, and you have to know how to do it, actually. That's the best way to go around it. So Mark, thanks. Thanks for inviting me into your studio once again.
That's fine. We did it once before, and it worked out well. So
yeah,
when you said let's do it again, I said no, but you insisted, and I opened the door, and there you were.
It was
no, it's very nice.
Showed up like I always do, right?
That's fine.
Right. Yeah. So you can see around in the room. There's these rivets. You have this. This is replicated from inside a submarine.
No, actually, a destroyer.
A destroyer.
It's since I do a lot of work for the Navy. One of the things I did was I figured, well, if I have to work, doing this stuff all the time, I want my office to look the part.
Yeah.
So I have rivets. I have real portholes for windows. I mean, I kind of went the whole 9 yards.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a little overboard.
The battleship,
no pun intended.
Gray.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Battleship
overboard.
Gray.
Oh boy, here we go already.
Yeah, simulated I-beams. In the ceiling. It's like, oh man, I didn't know when to quit.
Yeah. Speaking of that, your observatory. Now,
yes.
I'm gonna pull up a couple pictures as we're talking right here of your new observatory, and tell me how that all came about.
Well, the John Zach Memorial Observatory started when my friend John and I, and the reason it's a memorial observatory is sad, but he passed away due to cancer about 4 years ago, maybe 5, and John and I were going to create a remote observatory available through the internet where you could go and basically log in and take photos and then take pictures down that were really high quality. So we had decided this is what we were going to do. So we were working actively at that. We bought all this telescope equipment, and I said, okay, I'll get the observatory building and provide the land for it. And then what we would do is have this telescope available that we could log into, that other people could log into, and then actually, look at the sky in a whole new way. Now, unfortunately, he passed away, as I said, and that was about 4 years ago. And the telescope's been sitting in a box. And just a few months ago, I decided that's it. I can't stand that. It's going to have to get done. He would have wanted it to be done. Yeah. So I got the observatory building from a place in Canada. I got the telescope out of its box. I had the pier made at a, the telescopes have to be very stable. So I had to put it on a stable steel pier, which was on top of a very deep concrete pillar that I had to dig into the ground. So I did all that. And now we have the makings of the automated observatory. The nice part is that I'm going to use that building as a foundation and a jumping off point for our UFOTOG project, which is the project where we want to try and find evidence of alien incursion into our airspace through special sensory systems that will be looking for special certain radiations or whatever that they might be giving off that we can call like a smoking gun. Well, that said, we're going to be taking that to the next level. We're going to use that observatory with the telescope in there. It's going to have a platform to actually mount our little units to test them individually. And that'll be a controlled environment in which we can test them. And that's better than trying to test it out in the middle of the desert where you have to contend with sand and coyotes possibly relieving themselves on the thing or whatever. So it's a good jumping off point for that, and then, but the telescope itself is going to serve another purpose. It's going to be a jumping off point for people to come and join me on a sky tour. And we're going to be doing live sky tours with a special camera that is very sensitive, that will allow you to see the faint galaxies right there live on the screen. And then we're going to take them on a journey around the universe.
Now, is this so? This is something that. How would someone get involved in something like that?
You got to be crazy, because it could be a money pit. I mean, the telescope, of course, was not cheap, but the observatory also was not cheap. But the outcome at the end is that I get to do, and it would have been John and I, but that's fine. Okay, the outcome is I get to do this neat public outreach and education in astronomy by doing what I love. My degree was astronomy. Exoplanets are my bag. I love them. We're not going to be able to see exoplanets with this telescope, of course, but we can actually do research with this telescope that will actually show that a certain star may have exoplanets around it. We can do that research with this scope. That's the nice thing. See, it's got that availability, and it's not the Kepler Space Telescope, and it's not going to perform anywhere near the James Webb Telescope, which is going up next year.
Yeah,
and it certainly won't perform like TESS, which will be the new one going up too, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. But it will be a Earth-based, just like other Earth-based systems, system to actually look for that as a possibility. And that's down the line. But it's here right now where I live in Connecticut, and I'm setting it up. I'm automating it in here. It'll have automation gear so that it'll just be totally automatic. It'll open the dome by itself. If it starts to rain or it gets too high in humidity, it'll close the dome by itself. That stuff already exists. I don't have to build that. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of integrating it. And I like to do that. I can do that. And then once it's all worked out here, my goal is to actually move the whole thing entirely to a spot in Arizona. And the spot in Arizona would be one that's totally, totally dark sky.
Yeah, beautiful there for sky watching.
Yeah, dark sky.
Yeah. No, what I was getting at is how can someone actually connect with you to actually participate in watching this thing live?
Well, I'm going to be running what we're going to call the SkyStream live stream, and we're going to be doing live tours through YouTube, through streaming online, and people will be able to communicate with me that way, and then some. I mean, I'll hopefully build up a good enough following. I've got a lot of other heavy-duty streamers that I am already guests on their streams, and they have tens of thousands of people following them. So tens of thousands of people follow them, and they hear me on these streams, and that's something that that serves as a backdrop and as a foundational element to getting more people to come watch me. I did a test stream today. And I watched my chat room filling up, and I didn't even announce it to anybody. It was just because the subscriptions, the people that subscribe, are getting these little notices.
Yeah. And
on my Facebook page, I saw that one person said, "Oh, he's going live. He's live." It's like, well, I am.
Yeah.
You really got to be ready for this. Because it just happens immediately, and it's like, wow.
I remember when I was setting up the YouTube live stream for the first time, I did a test, and there was like 20 people. And
For a test,
testing, and then they said, "Yeah, we hear you." But yeah, so that's great.
Oh.
I love it. I think that's really great because it really gets it out there, and then it's up there afterwards.
That's right. And the whole point is to take this back to astronomy and take this back to the study of planets around other stars, and contribute to the science in those ways. Using equipment that is available to everybody. And just because I have an observatory, that doesn't mean that equipment's not available. There's over 1,000 of these particular observatories out there already. All right. So really? It's not like it's not available. This stuff is commercially available stuff. If this is where you want to go, you'll find your way.
All right. Before we move on, I wanted to talk a little bit about UFO Talk, and just you started to talk about that. Just where is it in, we've talked about this a number of times, where is it in development these days?
Well, right now, my purpose right now is to actually find the right camera chip that we want to use. So another purpose for this observatory, and I've already tested this camera chip. I've got this Sony chip. It's called the Exmor, EXMOR, and the Exmor series is really sensitive, has tremendous sensitivity up and down, and it also has the ability to vary the exposure hugely, and you can get full 4K, which is very high resolution video, 4K video out of the camera at any of those sensitivities. And so, for instance, if we have a UFO Talk system, and that's why I'm testing this chip, madly, when you look at the sky, if you see a faint light in the sky, no camera that's just an ordinary camera that you can buy anywhere will really have the ability to look at that thing and then zoom in on it and see it, as a nice bright light. This camera can do that. And you can turn around and use it to shoot a birthday party if you want. It has all those availability to it and capability. And so this camera chip is very versatile, and that's why I'm testing it now. And so where we are is I'm testing this Sony chip, and if it works like I think it will, we'd like to make it the basis of our cameras for the UFO Talk system, which, as I've told you before, the camera's already designed and the prototype's already working. But the camera chip, the core chip, is something that we actually have to really be careful with and think very hard about. So, and camera chips all do the same kind of thing in the same sort of way. So we just have to do that. We just have to bring that to fruition.
Someone just asked if you could. They want to know how to get to your channel. Are you able to say that, or would it have to be typed in?
Actually, my YouTube channel is just my name, Marc D'Antonio.
2 words or one word together?
It's 2 words, 2 separate words, and it's all for me. It's just I just made it all lowercase because I was too lazy to put the caps in. What can I say?
So that's MARC.
Yes.
And it's D and no apostrophe.
No apostrophe.
DANTIO.
No, you got it wrong. See, even he spelled it wrong.
Yeah. So
it's MARC space DANTONIO. So it's Antonio with a D in front of it. Think of Antonio.
Backwards. I said it backwards?
Well, you said DNT. Right, never mind.
Let's not argue.
It's Antonio with a D in front of it. I think that's what it is. Am I right?
No, you're wrong.
Oh, crap.
I got it right. All right.
No, I was right. Don't listen to Martin.
All right. So so the basis of the show tonight, that you and I had a chat on the phone a while back, and that is if, there's all these planets out, I don't know if you, I'm sure you heard the recent NASA quote that they think that every single star most likely is part of a solar system, has planets, which makes sense, total sense, really.
Right. Why should we be unique?
Yeah. Right. So I started to ask you these questions, and I wondered how aliens would develop. It doesn't have to be intelligent aliens, but there's so many variables in my thinking that I just wanted to ask you. Like, for instance, say a planet's in the Goldilocks zone, it's going to support life. Life somehow sparks. I don't even know. That's the biggest question. How does it begin with? But anyway, say it has twice the gravity as Earth. What is different about being? Is it lower to the ground? Is it?
Well, I mean, the basic premise is that we have to try to speculate based on one and only one template that we have, and that's life on Earth.
Right.
Intelligent life on Earth. We're the only template. Now, we have a skeleton. We came from the ocean. So that's why we have a skin. The skin seals in the salty water, the vestigial ocean that we carry around with us all the time. That's why you have salty skin. It's because we originated in the ocean. That's the reason. So, if life elsewhere, on another planet, for instance, did not arise actually out of an ocean, well, then they might not have a skin trapping in the moisture that they needed from the salt environment that they evolved from. We evolved that, all right? And if there was a planet, for instance, and that's just an aside from what you asked, but if there was a planet with higher gravity, to the inhabitants on that planet, that might not change their evolutionary paths per se. It would just change the way they developed, because they would develop structures that can withstand that. And to them, it would be perfectly natural. For instance, in the deep ocean, we find at pressures of 7,000 to 10,000 pounds per square inch of pressure in the deep ocean, we find life swimming around like nothing. But if we went out there, we'd die.
Yeah.
Why? Because, well, first of all, we have water in most of our tissues, right? The only places we don't have water in our body are where? The lungs and the sinuses, right? Mm-hmm. Okay? And a little bit in the inner ear, behind the eardrum. But beyond that, if we were in the deep ocean, we would immediately have our lungs compressed. Our sinuses would be pressurized and filled with water. And that'd be the end for us, obviously. But otherwise, we could handle the deep ocean. If we could breathe liquid that was saturated, as the Navy actually did tests with this liquid, and you saw, a storyline in the Abyss.
Abyss, yes.
Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the storyline in the Abyss where they actually breathed this hypersaturated oxygen solution.
And that's real?
That was real. There was a test done with Navy people, Navy divers, and it was terminated because it was hard to get them back. I mean, they could end up breathing this saturated liquid, but the problem was getting that out of your lungs after. They all ended up with pneumonia, and it was a long recovery, so it really wasn't worth it. But
wow.
The benefit is, once they were in that mode, they could drop right to the bottom of the ocean, and it wouldn't affect them. Because when you dive underwater, you feel that pressure.
Yeah.
Well, that pressure is in your ears and in your sinuses.
Yep.
Well, if you had the liquid already in there, you wouldn't feel any pressure at all, would you?
Wow.
You'd be able to go all the way to the bottom, and it wouldn't matter. If your lungs were full of liquid, they have to be completely full of liquid, then you wouldn't have any problem. And that's what was the principle behind that. But so if alien beings on such a planet were in, say it was an ocean planet, and say they developed some type of ability to do both land and water transition, as we did. We left the ocean and we never went back as a species. But maybe being there on another planet, maybe they actually go back and forth. And if they go back and forth, then they would actually develop a way to be able to transition between, say, a water breather and an air breather. Maybe their atmosphere is thicker. Maybe the planet has a bigger atmosphere because maybe the planet has more gravity. With more gravity, bigger atmosphere would mean more pressure. More pressure means the air is more dense, perhaps, at the ground level where they are. And so that dense air might be akin to the dense water. And so maybe that transition wouldn't be such a big deal for them, whereas for us, our air pressure is 14.7 pounds per square inch. That's not terribly crushing for us because we developed in it, but that's per square inch. If you just hold your fingers and do a square inch shape, say, wow, 14 and almost 15 pounds on every inch of your body is being pressed down by the weight of the air over your head. Mm-hmm. And you got to wonder, how can we develop it all? Because when you think of those pressures, if you put 15 pounds of pressure on anything, it's going to feel it, you
Right.
know. But that's in addition to the 15 pounds it already developed with. See, so we developed in this environment. Deep ocean creatures developed in that environment. So the pressure means nothing to them.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. No. Okay. So I guess I will word up questions like, to say there was a similar evolution to our planet. Say species began very similar to the way we began, but let's just throw a couple of variables. Like, how much did the moon pitch into where we are as humans?
The moon played a tremendous role in what we are, but don't forget that if the moon didn't exist, we might still exist, but it would be different. I'll tell you why. The moon gives us those huge tides that we see. Now, as the moon goes around the Earth, there's a tidal bulge that occurs from actually just the spinning of the Earth, but because the water is also being tugged on by the moon, you get that oceanic bulge. That's what causes the tides. We see that very dramatically in the Bay of Fundy, where the tides can vary by 20-something feet or more, at every time there's a tidal shift. Now that effect, has the following effect on any life. In those shallows, when the moon is in the right place and the tide goes out, life forms that are normally gill-breathing fish might be left behind in a small tidal pool. And over millions of years, they might develop a way to contend with that should the pool dry out before the tide came back in. And that's exactly what happened. So the moon allowed us to evolve out of the ocean because it created these expansive areas of partially dry land, which still had living creatures in it. And certain creatures, when you look in the tidal pool now, you say, well, those things couldn't survive without water, and of course, right, because that's that species. But you have to look at the fact that that wasn't the species that came out of the water. Why? Because it's still there. You have to go beyond that. You have to take into account that the tidal pools that were created by the moon exposed other life forms that are no longer here in the same way to the air. And it made it easier for that transition to occur. But let's look at what happens if the moon's gone. If the moon was gone, we would still get tides. And where?
Yes, from either from the Earth rotating or from the sun, possibly.
Both. You're right. The rotation of the Earth causes a lag behind of the water, and that actually would cause a small tidal change. But there would be an equilibrium reached, as that rotation occurs at some point. But the sun is there, and the sun would cause smaller, but still effective tides.
Does it actually cause any type of tidal change now?
Yes, it does. The sun and the moon together cause the tides. They sum their components together. Now, the sun is 400 times farther away than the moon, so obviously it's going to have a lesser effect. But it's also almost 1 million miles across, and it's very, very massive comparatively to the moon. So its effect is not equal to the moon at all, but it's far less. But we will see a tide that is due to the moon. Due to the sun. And that would also promote tidal flats, smaller ones. But it's possible that it would be enough to allow us to have come out of the water. So without a moon, it's possible that we could have still developed, but that might have taken us longer. And so we have to say, well, if it took us longer, what would that mean for us? It would mean that we wouldn't have gotten out of the water, wouldn't have left the ocean for perhaps another 500,000, 1 million years, maybe 2 million or 3 million years. And that would change everything about how we develop, perhaps. We may still have a skin, but with a vestigial ocean inside. But we might have changed. It might be different. Now, what is that different? Watch any science fiction movie, okay? And the speculation is there. You can see that there's a million different answers. But I just think that without the moon, we would still see the tides, but not nearly as much. And the possibility to achieve that exit from the water is still present.
Now, there are different types of suns, different types of stars.
Yes.
And what difference would a different type of star make on evolution?
Very good question. And again, we only have ourselves as templates to speculate, but it's okay. We can speculate. Our sun is a type G star. It puts out, a certain amount of energy that we've come to live with. It has solar flares that come out sometimes and hit us in the polar regions and spiral down through the North Pole. The reason it does that is because we have a magnetic field. Now, a magnetic field on our planet is very, very important. Without a magnetic field, we would not be here, because a magnetic field traps out all the dangerous particles. And different types of suns have different amounts of radiative explosions and outbursts. Now, the most prolific star in the universe, in our galaxy and in the universe, are these what are called M-type stars. You heard about one recently with the TRAPPIST-1 discovery.
Right.
TRAPPIST-1, right? 7 planets, all of them closer to their sun than Mercury is to the sun, to our sun. Now, that sounds like not a lot of possibilities, except that star puts out 0.08%, 8/100ths of the energy that our sun puts out.
Wow.
It's a much smaller star. It's called an ultra-cool red dwarf. Now, it's ultra-cool as in, whoa, that's cool, but it's also ultra-cool as in temperature, all right? So that ultra-cool temperature means that the habitable zone, that zone where liquid water could be present on the surface of the planets, is that much closer to its star. And 3 of those 7 planets are in that Goldilocks zone around its star. Now, it has to be said that there's caveats, and this is another thing that you would have to ask about: how could life develop if this was going to happen? Certain things, and there's one certain thing that is part and parcel with having planets very close to their star like this. They're tidally locked to the planet,
so they don't turn.
They do, but only once per orbit around the star.
Right.
So that effectively means that they have the same face facing the star the whole time. Now,
like our moon, basically.
I was going to say just exactly like our moon. But here's the neat thing about that. If life could exist on that permanent permanent sun and permanent dark type planet, just imagine the vacations you could have. Tropical paradise. You can go to a beautiful sunsets all the time, every single day, day in, day out. You have beautiful sunsets, all right, because the sun is always there on the edge. It's always a beautiful sunset. You can take pictures forever. And then you say you want to go to do a star tour. You want to go to an observatory. Well, you can just go on the dark side of the planet, okay? And you could go to an observatory there and just observe the stars. The issue, though, is that these stars, because they're so low output and the planets are so close, the planets go around them in a period of a couple days. The longest for TRAPPIST-1 is something like, 22 or 23 days, I think. The outermost planet it takes to go around its star. So its year, right, is only a few days long, right? The time it takes to go around the sun once, their star. So if you're looking at a telescope and you're watching, let's say, one of the other planets where it goes around, like, in just say 9 days, your telescope would visibly be moving as it's tracking the stars, because you'd be looking overhead and you'd see the stars changing their position constantly. Well, not the stars moving against themselves, but your sky would be moving because your year is progressing right before your eyes. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. Now, in this particular case, say something's locked like that, would it possibly have just a small strip of an area that would actually be habitable for certain beings?
That's a good point. In the tropical zone, say the perpetual noontime, there might be a certain type of life that's always present there. If life could form at all, perhaps it's deserted and arid because of billions of years of arid, or millions of years or hundreds of millions of years of arid sunlight, and tropical effect. But then in the temperate zone, near the sunset side, There might be a narrow band all the way around the planet in that area, where the sun is always about 20 degrees above the horizon or 30 degrees above the horizon. And it might be that zone where from there to near the dark side to the sunset side, there might be that narrow band of prolific life of a certain kind.
I just remembered that a lot of times we get some questions up in our forum, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. But now, if the one question that I think scientists always try to answer is, how does life begin? You know, I mean, because we're talking about alien life, so we can only go by what happened here, but still we have no idea how it begins.
Yeah, I mean, the closest we can come to figuring that out comes with looking at the experiment that was done in the early 50s called the Miller-Urey experiment. These two scientists put in a glass flask that contained gases that were considered to be the components of the primordial atmosphere. They had moisture and water in the bottom of the flask, like a primordial ocean, and they had an electrode constantly doing a flash, like lightning, and they just let that go. At the end of a week, when they looked at it, they found that they had created amino acids, and amino acids are the building blocks of life. Now, that happened by itself. Now, in addition to those building blocks of life being created by the Earth itself, that shows that the Earth itself could, with lightning striking the ocean, lightning striking on the land. In addition, we had comets bringing tons and tons of water, lots of amino acids, as well as meteorites bringing lots of amino acids. We know this for a fact. The Murchison meteorite that came to Earth was full of amino acids. And the Miller-Urey experiment was deemed a success because they found a few amino acids at the end of that week. But 50 years later, those vials were pulled out again and examined, and they found 22 additional amino acids that they hadn't been able to detect at the time. Wow. So this shows that these building blocks of life really can form by themselves. Now, the question about what gives it the spark of life, I mean, well, there you go. I mean, that's a question for theologians and scholars that goes far beyond this show, and no one knows. And I'm content with that, because as a science person, I tend to think that it's important to examine everything we can put our hands on and talk about directly. Like, for instance, the iridium layer on the planet Earth. Iridium is an element in the periodic table, obviously, and it's very rare. It's heavier than iron, all right, by a long shot, and iron constitutes a lot of the Earth's crust, right? So when the Earth was molten, any iridium that was on the Earth it's called differentiation. The iron would be all molten, sitting there, and then this iridium would basically sink to the bottom and go farther down, deeper down. So during differentiation, that time when the Earth was cooling, all the iridium that was present would have gone far out of sight, so to speak, and we wouldn't have seen it. But in a certain layer of sediments found all over the world, they found a trace layer of this iridium. Why? Where did it come from? That was the coolest little clue. All right, that Luis Alvarez and his son actually used to figure out that, and two other people actually too, but they figured out that was probably from an interstellar interloper, okay, or an interloper like an asteroid that hit the Earth, and that could explain the elimination of the dinosaurs, because that happened at the Cretaceous, and they used to call it Tertiary, now it's called Paleogene. The Cretaceous Paleogene boundary, 65 million years ago. That's when the asteroid hit and destroyed the dinosaurs. Now, everybody has this illusion that the dinosaurs were killed instantly by this gigantic fireball. That's not what happened. In fact, most of the dinosaurs that were alive on the Earth never even saw it hit and never even knew what happened. All they knew was that the sky just was getting darker. There was not a lot of sun, and the plants were dying. And those that ate plants, starved, and those that ate the plant eaters starved. And that's what changed it. It took thousands of years for that effect to occur. So really? It wasn't instant. Yeah, it wasn't instant at all.
Thousands of years. Yeah. So I was one of those people that thought it was more along the instant.
Yeah, but you're not alone, and that's not nothing to be, to feel uneducated about, because it was actually drummed into our heads. The asteroid killed the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And so you think, wow, that was quick, but it wasn't. I mean, it was a long time. That was a long, event.
So would you speculate that with our 5 or 6 massive extinction events, is it 5 or
5?
6?
Yeah.
5. Would you expect that an alien planet would have extinction events?
Interesting you should ask that, because that's where I was going with this.
Okay.
When we talk about extinctions like that, Cretaceous Paleogene extinction, the 65 million year asteroid hit, basically, that's the one they found off the Yucatan Peninsula. That event kind of is a recent one that we could tell, but it's one of 4 others that occurred on the planet. And there's also another period of time on this planet when the Earth was a frozen snowball. It was called the Snowball Earth. And it actually was fully glaciated everywhere,
Wow.
100%. And that, how do we get out of that? Well, again, the Earth is very dynamic. The sun is very dynamic. This is when the sun was younger. So there was a lot of changes going on. And so the Earth went through this evolution of its own. And this is what happened. Now, if we look at what would happen if, say, all 5 of these extinctions did not occur? What if the Great Permian dying in the Permian era, 98% of all organisms were killed, species, and we have to be careful about saying animals versus species, and then that left a hole in the evolutionary record, right? The evolutionary possibilities now opened up for more animals to fill in and evolve from there. When the Cretaceous Paleogene event occurred and the asteroid hit, way up in recent history, which is 65 million years ago to us, that left a gigantic hole. And little tiny mammals the size of a shrew were selected for success. And they blossomed, and that's it. That started the whole next phase. And then from all of those various animals that did survive, here come us. Now, and we look this way. But if any one of those extinction events on our planet didn't occur exactly as it had, we wouldn't be here like this. We would have been different. Something would have been different. It's fun as heck to speculate about what that might be.
Yeah.
Okay. And I say in my book, where I talk about this, I say if dinosaurs didn't die, then perhaps we'd be sitting here with yellow eyes, admiring our reptilian scales or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But and I mean, there were a couple of dinosaurs that actually were increasing their brain capacity at a fairly high rate, right? A lot of those dinosaurs, there was a couple that were actually really accelerating their brain capacity, and that's how we measure intelligence for us. But it's cranial capacity and the ability to, the folds and convolutions in the brain are thought to actually contribute to intelligence and so forth. But dinosaur brains were very small, so the likelihood of them ever becoming truly intelligent may not have been there. And you got to remember, intelligence is not a destination. It's not an end point. Okay, it's a journey, and you may never get there. Okay, there's a lot of branches that take you down dead ends. And
well, what about dolphins, for one? Dolphins are very intelligent,
mm-hmm.
or the second most intelligent mammal, right?
Yeah, and they have brains nearly our size, if not bigger, actually.
But they don't have thumbs. They don't have opposing.
Right. Now, think about that. Does that mean that dolphins can't reason? Because they don't have, say, I'm not talking about the thumbs. Okay, you don't need thumbs to reason. Okay. And you don't need thumbs to go, yay, but you do need thumbs for grasping. Okay, that's what primates do. That's what we do. We're primates. And so if you think about the dolphin is a sleek creature that has nothing but flippers. Those flippers on other animals, other species that develop differently onto the land, those flippers became stubs. Those stubs became forearms. Okay, and the flippers evolved into tails or into legs, and so, and the other fins. So there's a lot of ways that you see life can develop, and dolphins right now, they're at whatever point they are in their evolution. they're very intelligent comparatively when you look at them with other animals compared to other animals. But where they are is where they are. Where will they be in a million years? I don't know. Will they be intelligent? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. But again, you have to look at where they've been and how they've increased their or how they've changed over the years.
Right. There's a question in the forum, and let's see. As astronomers are discovering more and more exoplanets, do you think this will motivate scientists to reevaluate methods of searching for ET life towards these planets?
Actually, I think I understand that question, and I'll answer it this way. I used to be kind of negative against the SETI program. Now Seth Shostak is great. He's a tremendous guy.
Yeah.
And I thought the program was a great program, but I felt like it was originally, I felt like it was short-sighted because, you're looking at the neutral hydrogen band, this 21 centimeter band, okay? And you're trying to find somebody else that sees that there's very little on that as well, and maybe a species somewhere in the universe is using that to send messages. And to me, I was like, well, those messages would be coming at the speed of light, and it would take 21 years to go 21 light years from a star, and many stars are tens of thousands of light years away. So I didn't see the value until I started to think about it. And this is to the credit of Shostak and the team and other folks. What we're doing with UFOTOG, what Dave Schock is doing with CubeSat, and what other people are doing individually, and Seth Shostak is doing with SETI. We need all those together because we're trying to find a needle in a haystack. And that haystack might come from somebody utilizing that 21 centimeter line, the 21 centimeter band. We don't know. So it was arrogant of me to even suggest to people that Shostak, was barking up the wrong tree. Because I've actually, and this is on my own, I came to this conclusion, and I'm happy to admit it. I felt over time that I was really too hard on that program because we need it all. Everyone has to be looking for life in a variety of different ways. And think about it. The variations in the methodologies for how somebody might communicate from another star by using that relatively empty band of neutral hydrogen, or by using interdimensional travel and releasing radiation that might be something we can pick up with our system, or seeing an interloper enter the atmosphere from space on a space camera like Dave Schock's, the CubeSat. So I think that we need all of it together, and most likely it'll be a little old lady in Teaneck, New Jersey, who looks up and says, "There he is," and makes the big discovery.
Yeah.
But all I care about is that we make the big discovery. I don't care who does it, and I don't care how it gets done. I just want to see it happen. I don't have any ego to bruise here. We just all have to work as a team.
Yeah. So very much along those lines, the second question from that same person was, what scientific alternatives do you think are possible to search for ET along the lines of what SETI does?
Well, along the lines of what SETI's doing, I don't know, but I can, because there's really one band of neutral hydrogen that's actually fairly empty, so there's not much more you can do with that. But I can tell you this: when the James Webb Telescope goes up next year, we're going to have the ability now to actually look at the atmospheres of these exoplanets, and that's going to help us detect components in those atmospheres. So say we want to, or see no atmosphere. So say we want to look at one of the TRAPPIST stars, TRAPPIST-1 planets rather, and we go to the TRAPPIST-1 star system, and we look at component F, which is in the smack dab in the middle of the habitable zone according to the current understanding. And we see that it doesn't even have an atmosphere. Should we look at E, the one that's closer to the star? Or how about G? It's just outside, but all three are still in the habitable zone. You see, it gives us clues. Now, the reason is those types of stars also have high amounts of ultraviolet radiation and stellar flares that they give off. And they're very, very powerful. These stars are very long-lived. They live trillions of years compared to our billions of years for our star. 5 billion years compared to 30 trillion. That's kind of a long time. And it can sit out there and burn very slowly over all those years, these M-type stars. But they also have these radiative outbursts, these flares. And if they don't have a magnetic field that can trap them, if they don't have a strong magnetic field that can trap those bursts and allow life to have a chance to flourish, then it'll render the surface sterile and will strip the atmosphere away over time. And by over time, I don't mean 20 years. I mean, 40, 50, 100 million, 200 million, a billion, that kind of, we're talking long term.
Yeah.
So, there's the possibility that the James Webb Telescope is going to allow us to have some, or find some targets that we think are really viable, and as much as we think they might be viable now, we're really not going to know until we can tell whether they actually have an atmosphere that's got oxygen, water vapor, industrial pollutants from someone who's in the Renaissance age, coal burning or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff we can look for.
So if we're at that point now, let's just say there's an advanced civilization out there, intelligent civilization, that could have been spying on our planet millions of years ago, possibly, right?
That's right, because one thing we found in the universe is that there's a sliding window of planetary formation. Now, think about this. Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and the universe is 14 billion years old. Earth came along fairly recently.
Yeah.
Okay, the universe has been kicking around for 2/3 beyond us, in its past. So, we only came along relatively recently in terms of the universe. This means that any life that's in the universe that could have been advanced could have developed on a planet that's long since been destroyed. And they moved on to other star systems. Maybe we're seedlings from those folks. We don't know. It seems very much like we've evolved here, though. I mean, we have a pretty good history, a pretty good understanding of where we came from in terms of origins. And I think it's possible that we were seeded, but it's very, very distant for me. But if you think about it, our place in the universe is not really all that unique. There's a lot of planets out there. There's a lot of planets in the habitable zone. Now, some of the early work indicated that it was kind of a bleak outlook. And that if you remember the Drake equation, when Frank Drake did his equation, he found that there might only be a tiny handful, 0 to 1 even, of intelligent species in the universe. But then again, he was going at the time with what he knew. One viable planet. It's us. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's science's hallmark. It's really it's really kind of pessimistic a lot of times. And I never was. And when I was getting my astronomy degree, I remember saying to I said to the head of the department in astronomy at my university, I said to him, I really believe that the universe is full of life. I think there's a lot of life out there. I said, maybe not necessarily intelligent life, but
especially here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life here. But yeah, but I said, I don't think the universe there's a dearth of life. I think it's very populous. I think it's a real populated universe. And that eventually became the title of my book, The Populated Universe. And I said it because I really felt that. And he looked at me and typical science, right? He just pulled up his suspenders and he said, Mr. D'Antonio, get back in the observatory, leave Captain Kirk to us. And that was that. I've said that a million times, I know, but that's what happened. And so, I think that seeing what's happening in our evolution of understanding of exoplanets, we have as many as, the high end, if there's 400 billion stars in our galaxy, there's between 100 and 400 billion stars in our galaxy. We can't even count them yet. I mean, how far along are we, right? We can't even count the stars in our galaxy really reliably. But it looks like 10% of a galaxy's population has habitable planets, Earth habitable planets. And that doesn't even talk about life not like us. Yeah. Okay? So, but 10%, so maybe 10 to 40 billion. I mean, that's
And also, I want to point out that we always forget about moons, and moons could be habitable too.
Yes, exactly. And in our own solar system, we saw the latest information on Saturn's moon Enceladus.
Mm-hmm.
That's only 300 miles across that moon. However, it looks like it has hydrothermal vents beneath its surface. Where have you heard those before? You heard them before here on Earth. They're off the Juan de Fuca Ridge off Oregon's coast, 3,000 meters down in the ocean. There are these hydrothermal vents. They're spewing hydrogen sulfide, and there's these sulfide-eating bacteria that were there. Now, where did they come from? We don't know. But they're a food source. And they start a food source for an endless chain of other animals. Shrimp, clams, tube worms, all these other creatures, okay? Microscopic plankton guys, not plankton, microscopic organisms that eat this sulfide, all right?